Hey everyone, welcome you all back to What's Up podcast, which is a podcast for undocumented API resources and stories from the community. My name is Spoon. My pronouns are he, his, and him, and then I'm gonna popcorn it to Bubbles um, for the next part.
Hi everyone, my name is Bubbles. My pronouns are she, her, hers, and I'll popcorn to Casey.
Hi everyone, my name is Casey and my pronouns are she, her, hers. I will popcorn to Blue.
Hi everybody, my pronouns are he, him, his, and then I guess I will popcornate to Ria.
Hello, my name is Ria, and my pronouns are she, her, hers. Thanks for joining us today. Back to Spoon.
All right, thank you everyone. Thank you so much. So normally we start with our session with our name and our pronouns, generally because our names are not really our names, it's our pseudonyms, because we want to protect our guests as well as our committee here, and allows us to really communicate, uh, talk about our stories without feeling like we have to jeopardize our identity. So yeah, today I'm gonna go over quick policy updates. Our policy updates as we always do on every single episode regarding our immigration policy that impacts uh, national, state, and then local. Um, for now, there's some updates since last week. Um, yes, with that we're gonna get started. So there is some sort of, as always, as many of you are familiar, today's date is March 31st, 2021. Today's the last day of the March. So be sure to get some information right now. Basically, there's been a lot of conversation regarding the immigration policy. I know there's multiple immigration policy out on the floor right now, which is uh, uh, the Dreamer Promise Act as well as the farm workers. It passed the uh, it passed the House uh, uh, before. Now it's going to go to the Senate, and Senate has to pass sometimes in April. They're going to be having a conversation about sometime in April. Now, Dream and Promise Act and Farm Workers Act is not inclusive for all 11 million plus undocumented immigrants, but as KRC, as SUP, as What's Up podcast, as SUP, SUPP, we're advocating for an immigration policy that's for all, which is a citizenship for all campaign, which is inclusive to all 11 plus million undocumented folks, regardless of gender, race, ethnicity, where you're from, uh, um, regardless of whether or not you have uh, professional or academic aspirations, whether you went to college or not, or whether or not you have history with incarceration. None of those things matter because at the end of the day, our humanity is not dependent on any of those things. And we were advocating for that. And so in the Citizenship for OK, we also want to close down all detention centers as well as stopping all deportations. It's really important for a family reunification uh, and rehabilitation and healing rather than separation, right? It's really important for us to do that. So we're still not over yet, even if, let's say, for example, we're advocating to get at least um, to pass the bill without a filibuster. I'm sure many of us are familiar with the filibuster in the congressional floor. Is to halt a lot of the immigration progressive policies. To pass it without the filibuster, we'll need 60% of the vote rather than half plus one, right? So it's really important for us to do so. We're trying to advocate for a lot more across the aisle. And we need to really communicate and really pass something and really work together as a campaign. So with that, there's a lot more other things going on. In particular, today, President Joe Biden um, was supposed to do a speech in Philadelphia. There's been advocacy work around there. Since last week, there's been new impact on a strategy. So there's a magical parliamentary trick that the Democrats could use to unlock a third reconciliation bill this year. Because I know the first budget reconciliation bill was passed without a immigration reform. But the second one, we're trying to advocate to include the immigration reform in the second budget reconciliation bill, because that only requires 50+1 vote to pass. So Senate Majority Leader Chuck Schumer believes that he has found a method, but the trick is called Section 304. And we're going to hear a lot more about it coming soon. Basically, this section of the law that governs the congressional budgeting process essentially says that the Congress may revisit and amend an already passed budget resolution, like the one that was used to pass the COVID relief package, or at least that's what the Schumer aides are addressing. Recently, the top policy aides to Majority Leader Schumer made the argument to the Senate Parliament that Section 304 allows for at least one additional set of reconciliation bill related to the revenue, spending, and the public debt to be considered for the fiscal year of 2021. The Schumer aide previewing the strategy told us Sunday night. So basically, we have some sort of hope, even if the second budget reconciliation bill does not include immigration reform. There's still some method. So we got to continue to push and continue to advocate for immigration reform in the coming months, because the first 100 days of the Biden administration is almost ending soon. We don't have that much time left, and our communities have been waiting for a long time. So we will keep you all updated with our coming immigration reform that's happening. That's on the national level. In terms of the local level, we have some events happening even tomorrow. So basically, there was a article that was released a while ago about a Korean senior who's a resident of a senior community called Leisure World in Seal Beach, California. This Korean senior widow received a hate mail. So what happened is that her lifelong partner and a husband, who's a huge community in the community, Korean American community in California in Seal Beach, passed away. And during that time, even before burying the body, as well as going through the funeral process, while she was grieving, she received a letter claiming to be somebody from the community, Leisure World community, telling her that her husband passing was a good thing for the community, and that this person claims that the Asians, quote unquote Asian, this is their words on the letter, that taking over the America, and that Asians should go back to the country they're from. So there's been a lot of hate crime that's occurring in the API community, Asian Pacific Islander communities, as many other news are reporting. And it's affecting a lot of the seniors as well, especially in region where a lot of the seniors are living in. So so there's going to be a rally tomorrow on Thursday. Because of that issue, there was a huge press conference on Monday, but there's going to be a small rally every single day from Tuesday to this upcoming Saturday at the Leisure World residential homes. But tomorrow on Thursday, KRC, the Korean Resource Center, is going to be doing an event, a small event with the seniors who are there. So they're every single day from 11 a.m. to 12 p.m. They're holding up signs in front of the entrance, so while people are driving by, coming in, they can see that Leisure World, or the residents of Leisure World, are in supportive of diversity and the power of immigrants, rather than the hate that this Korean senior received. So they came out in support of this family. So yeah, that's something that's happening locally. Yeah, that's pretty much it in terms of information. And I would love to be able to talk a little bit more on our topic and the theme for today, which is mental health. And Casey, our amazing subcommittee, will be addressing some of the questions and conversation pieces. So Casey, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Spoon. So, again, I just want to say hi, everyone. I hope you've all had a lovely week. And, speaking about like the hate crimes that the API community has been facing these past couple months, I think it's important that, especially now that we're addressing like mental health, it's important to like check in on our loved ones and to see how unfortunately society is affecting their mental health, and how these actions, these hate crimes are really detrimental to one's overall health. So besides that, I think that I'm super excited that we're able to talk about this. I know that mental health is viewed as a taboo subject within the immigrant community as a whole, because lots of people feel uncomfortable talking about their feelings, or they're scared about how others will view them. And so I wanted to start off this discussion with asking you guys, how do you feel about this lack of conversation? Do you think that it's affecting your families, your loved ones? How do you think it affects your community as a whole? Um, let's see, who would like to start? Or I guess I can start, so that way I can give you guys some time to think. I think that I come from the Hispanic community, and I think that it's very difficult for, I think, the men within my community to speak upon their feelings. And I think it really feeds into machismo, which is known as like basically misogynistic points of view. It stems from misogynistic points of view. And machismo is very, it's like, oh my goodness, sorry guys. Machismo is very harmful to mental health because like they're not able to feel comfortable talking about what they're feeling, if they're upset, if they're sad, or expressing emotions overall. And so I think that the lack of conversation doesn't give them that gateway into being comfortable with that. And I'll pass it on to Spoon next.
Yes, thank you so much, Casey. So yeah, so I come from a little background. I come from a Korean American um, community, and so I think sometimes the word uh, impacts a lot of the way we think, and and I think in Korean the word crazy, which is means michin, crazy person or michin nom, is actually a bad word. It's not something where you just blurt out. It means that not only are you crazy or you have mental health issues, or it just means that you're less of a person. There's this connotation that you're like not a person, you know. And I think because of that and many other issues, at least in the Korean American community, um, mental health is not something that people really address. And there's this connotation and there's this emphasis or belief that if you have mental health issues, it's because you're quote unquote mentally weak. It's really weird. It's like they're saying like, oh, you don't have this strong will, you know. And I'm sure that many other people here could also attest to something similar. But yeah, it's in terms of mental health issues, we do not talk about it ever. There's been cases of in Korea, there was a case of fan death, fan death, where I think a lot is still Korean. My parents even believe in this. It's when uh, back in the day in Korea, if you leave the fan on and you go to sleep, because Korean summers are really hot, they say you die, and that you might suffocate or whatever. So my parents still believe in this. It's really weird, but it came from a history of like how electricity wasn't as common and people don't want to waste electricity, so they say turn off your fan when you go to sleep. Also, I recently found out that a lot of people, when they commit suicide in Korea, because there's still issues and mental health is impacting so many community members, they would tell the news outlet that it was a fan death, like they left the fan on and they passed away, so that the family is allowed to grieve. And that's what I heard. I'm not sure how reliable it is, but it's to a point where they want to avoid the mental health as something that needs to be addressed, but rather like shunned. They might be shunned. Yeah. So, yeah, I think Blue has something to say. Blue.
Yeah, thank you, Spoon, for that. Yeah, I wanted to speak on. I want to kind of highlight some of the parts that you were mentioning, because I also come from a Korean family, and much of what you said was kind of what I also experienced. I I guess in terms of my family, we never really spoke about mental health, just as the same reasons that you mentioned, because people usually view mental health as being mentally weak or not being able to handle the responsibilities that you're supposed to handle. And so, I grew up with that kind of mentality of having to deal with life, because life comes at you really fast, and it doesn't wait for you. And because it doesn't wait for you, you can either deal with your problems and try to get through them, or you can obviously seek help, mental health assistance to try to deal with them. And I always usually tend to use the former rather than the latter, just because that's just how I grew up, and that's how my parents grew up, because they're from Korea. So I do believe that that's an issue in Korea, because I don't know if you guys know this, but Korea has one of the highest suicide rates among teenagers and young adults, and just in general. There's a lot of people that are really stressed out, and I don't think that the country does a very good job in addressing the mental health issue that goes on, just because there is a lot of backlash for people that kind of try to seek out help. It's a really bad culture, because I read a paper about it, and then it was kind of highlighting all the issues that Korea has as a country. And then just speaking from my experience here, I guess because of my status, here in the United States, I tend to not want to speak out as much about my problems, just because of safety. It's like I try to keep a low profile most of the time. But yeah, I think that seeking out mental health is really good, and it should be something that should be brought into the light more, and just be more common for people to be able to do that. I think the conversation is shifting in the right direction nowadays, but I think there's still a lot of work to do. But yeah, and then I guess I'll pass it on to Ria next.
Thanks for opening up, everybody. I can think of two things that really affect my mental health in the Filipino community, as I'm part of the Filipino community. The few things that really bother me the most is the lack of privacy. I think in our community we are very tight-knit, and people are willing to help each other, but that willing to help transforms into being really nosy. So if someone has an issue and they're talking about what they're feeling, their mental health, how it's going, it'll turn into gossip for other people. And there's no real privacy between the person who is talking and the person that they confided into. So I'm not sure if it's a common topic with other communities, but I think it's so intrusive, and there's no privacy, and people who really want to talk about their feelings aren't able to keep that to themselves and keep that within the conversation. It just becomes news and fodder for everyone to talk about, just because it's like entertainment for them. And the other issue that affects mental health is it might be really bad to say, but I feel like religion is such a huge part of the Filipino culture, especially Catholicism. And I personally experienced having my mental health degraded because I couldn't, if I ever opened up to my family about my mental health and what I want to talk about with them, they would just say, just pray, just pray. And sometimes it feels like a band-aid that to say just pray, because what I really want at the end of the day is for my parents to listen to what I have to say and what I'm feeling, and not have to keep it to myself. So I wish there was a more open conversation about having conversations and that suffering shouldn't be done on our own. I don't know why it's glorified, but hopefully that can change in the future because community support has helped me a lot for sure. I guess, does anyone else want to add on? I know there's a lot of conversations that need to be had for sure.
I think we can definitely move on from that, from this opener that we started. But I think that you guys all made so many valid, important points. And I think that what you guys said like highlights that if more conversations were occurring regarding like mental health, depression, anxieties, and frustrations, then we'd be able to help more people as a whole. And I'm going to bring it to now that we're seeing like the quote unquote the light at the end of the tunnel with this pandemic, with the vaccines that are coming out. I want to know about like, or discuss with you guys about how are you guys coping with the COVID-19 pandemic? What were some things that you felt like you struggled with? And now that it's kind of on the low, do you think you're going to be experiencing a different method of coping with your anxieties? Do you think, what did you gain from this experience as a whole? Anyone can start.
Yes, I can start. This is Spoon. I think that COVID really impacted a lot of us differently. As a undocumented and AAPI, I think there really isn't too many resources or communities that we can really talk to. I think that was the first thing. We had this SUPP, like we mentioned, the Undocumented API Support Group at KRC, but uh, I don't think that's enough. We really don't get a chance to talk to and so many other people who might not be in this space, who might not know about uh, a support group that we have here. I know that um, there was so a community member reached out to us once regarding an issue that would happen. Without sharing too much detail, there was a father who reached out to us whose son committed suicide on the uh, beginning of the COVID process. I think the family was undocumented. That they asked the reason why they called us, and despite everything, they're in complete uh, in emotional chaos. They were afraid of calling the cops, because they were undocumented. I think that is something that not only is COVID and everything impacted, but a lot of our world is seen through the eyes of undocumented API issues. I think this is why we wanted to do this podcast because um, people who might have something like that destructive happen in their life, they're looking at it in a different format because their options are different. So I think COVID definitely impacted my family because we don't know anything about EEDs or governmental reform or assistance or anything like that. We try to keep each other informed, but there really isn't the lack of information for at least the API community because sometimes a lot of the information and resources might be translated into Spanish, but they don't have enough resources to translate to other languages as well. So I think it really was hard to deal with COVID-19 during that time. Yeah.
Thank you for sharing, Spoon. I think we can pass it on to Bubbles.
Yeah. Hi, everyone. So I live in New York City, and the pandemic started here in New York first, and we had a pretty long lockdown. I feel like I think in the beginning it was kind of like in the beginning we were okay. We were kind of happy, but I think like as the lockdown kind of like stretched, like stretched on longer than we anticipated. And as the months kind of like went by, we all kind of started feeling really anxious. I definitely started feeling very depressed towards the summer and beginning of like the fall. We were running out of like things that we could do indoors. And it was a little hard to cope at first, but I think like I tried different things like playing video games, joining sub. Joining sub actually helped because it helped me like, meet once a week with other undocumented AAPI and, like just talk and share how we were feeling. So that actually really helped. And it was something that I looked forward to every week. And then once the lockdown kind of like lifted and things started opening up again in New York, it was a little bit easier. Things started to, like seem like they were looking up. It's getting better in New York. A lot of more people are eligible for the vaccine now. I've been trying to get an appointment to get to get vaccinated, but it's been hard because there's no appointments available anywhere. So yeah, and one thing that for me helped the most was to just keep myself busy. Of course, there were times that I felt like I didn't want to do anything, and I was totally fine too because I just needed like a break to just sit there, with my thoughts and I guess quote unquote meditate. Um, and I feel good about myself being, sitting down in silence. But nowadays I feel more motivated, so I just find myself like doing a lot of different things. I decided to go back to school, so that's something that's been keeping me busy and also happy because I've been wanting to do that for a long time. And yeah, I think like you just have to find something that makes you happy and keeps you motivated so that you're able to cope with the anxieties and the negative feelings that you have from the pandemic. I don't know who else wants to share.
Oh, I can go next.
Okay.
I can definitely relate to everything that you said about trying everything and other activities and then eventually running out of interests to do and dive into. So SUPP, I also agree with that SUPP has helped me a lot during the pandemic in the sense of finding a community again, just because I find myself to be an extroverted person and I love being surrounded by people and community. And when that was taken away from me and the whole world, I didn't know what to do because a source of my happiness was just cut off from me for just right away. And I found that during the pandemic, I needed some confidence again. So I read a lot of like self-help books. I think the one that affected me the most was a book by the Dalai Lama and Nelson Mandela. And not Nelson Mandela, oh my gosh. I'm going to get back to everybody on what the book is, but it was a conversation between two people from different religions and how they find true happiness in life and like it. And so that really helped me a lot in reshaping my point of view and what I want to do, what my purpose in life is, and like what I think is important to me. So reading self-help books was really helpful, and also coming to SUPP was really helpful. And I mean, I'm not gonna say that it was really easy to get through the difficult parts, especially the parts of not knowing what to do if the pandemic never ends. I think I felt very disheartened by the fact that I don't know, I don't have like a route for my future anymore. I thought my future was definitely over. But hopefully, with the pandemic lifting, I can see the light at the end of the tunnel again and look forward to things again. But I'm definitely going to have more caution around people now. I'm going to have my mask on for a really long time. So, but be safe, everybody, and also get your vaccines too. Does anyone else? I can pass it on back to Casey if that's okay.
That's perfectly fine. Thank you so much for sharing, Ria and Bubbles and Spoon. Yeah, I feel like I don't know. I feel we all experience such a variety of feelings while going through this pandemic. What was the quote or the hashtag? We're all alone together. And like that's true. We were all like alone, but experiencing various different things. And I think it's important to validate and acknowledge that it's a spectrum. It's a spectrum of how affected were you by being like an introvert versus an extrovert, how not having your community rally around you or that support that you were so used to of interacting with, having that being like removed because of safety reasons, right? So I wanted to move on a little bit. That leads into our next little like discussion topic of what are some tips or advice would you have for other people now that we've had this experience and you guys did share a little bit about what you did during the pandemic. I know that I'll share a resource first. I was looking into like crisis lines, and there's a national number called 1-800, or the number is 1-800-273-TALK. And I'm located in SoCal. So our California mental health agency, I guess, and that's probably not the right term, and I apologize, but the gist of it is that it's an agency, an organization. It's called Each Mind Matters, and they have various resources for the API community. And Spoon mentioned earlier that there was that with documentations and things, they're not translated into a variety of API languages. So, but Each Mind Matters actually has Japanese, Korean, Vietnamese, and a bunch of other API community languages available for the general public to view. So I think they're a wonderful resource. Who does anybody else have any tips or any resources they'd like to share? Spoon?
Yes, thank you so much, Casey. Yeah, so Spoon here again. I think I don't have any particular very like specific resource, but I think first and foremost, being in spaces like these, where we speak, talk, because I think one thing that we want to address is that if you don't address the problem, you cannot find solutions together. And I think I want to thank everybody here as well, Casey, leading this amazing discussion and this sensitive discussion. I know it's our second episode, but we're already tackling deep issues. Um, but I think really finding a community. I know that everybody here was able to find SUPP. If you can't join a subgroup, there's plenty of organizations, meetings, and resources out there that we're going to mention more and more. But yeah, be sure to just really find communities that you can and just talk about it. Talk to more people. I think uh, being vulnerable being vulnerable, there's strength in being vulnerable. I think a lot of people think it's weakness, but it's not. It's actually scary to be vulnerable. It's more scary to open up rather than being closed off. So yeah, I think one of the ways that we uh, love to deal with some of the personal issues, we like to talk about it, address it, so that we can be like, hey, I'm going through something similar, or hey, this is what I did, or this is what you did, X, Y, and Z. So yeah, I think it's perfect. So be sure to find a community and talk to more people, share your stories. It's really important.
Yeah, I just wanted to, this is Blue here. I just wanted to add my 2 cents to this as well. I also don't have any particular resources, but one way that I've been coping is just by exercising. I know, I mean, that's usually, not something that people think about when they think about like trying to cope with, their mental health, but it has been proven that, people that are, physically active usually have a sharper mind and they're not as depressed. It's a great way to kind of relieve your stress away. And when you work out, usually, at least when I work out, I don't think about my problems, and I'm thinking about like getting through the workout and getting physically those endorphins going while working out. So I do think physical uh, exercise is really good during the pandemic. And you don't really have to go to a gym, obviously, because of the pandemic. We can't really go to the gym, so you can do workouts at home, and that would be great too. And then another one that I think that has helped me is just looking into podcasts that might interest you. If you have a particular topic that you might want to learn about more, or you just want to look into people talking about different things, looking into podcasts, it's also a great way to try to, get your mind off of, the pandemic and all the problems that has brought to our lives. And I particularly like, sports. So I usually listen to like basketball podcasts and things like that. But, whatever you like, it's something that you should probably look into in terms of a podcast. And then the last one would probably be, just do something you like, anything that you like that takes your mind off of it. I think that one problem that I feel like people have a lot is that they focus so much in what problems they have, and they have like all these things that they want to, solve, or these things that they want to get rid of in terms of their problems in life, but they think about them too much that, it exhausts them mentally. And then once they're mentally exhausted, that's when, your mental health starts, deteriorating. So that's why I think it's important to always take breaks in between your work days, and just give yourself some time to just relax and turn your mind off a little bit. But yeah, and then I guess I will pass it on to Casey. Yeah.
Thank you, Blue. Actually, I think Ria remembers the name of the book that she'd like to share. So, Ria, if you could.
Yeah, the book is actually called Book of Joy, and it's a conversation between the Dalai Lama and Archbishop Desmond Tutu. So that is what the book is called, if you wanted to read into it. And it's kind of a silly resource or advice, but if you want some simple entertainment, I think and you're willing to learn about a new social media, I think TikTok has really helped throughout the pandemic. It's a great resource for comedy, for finding communities, and people who want to talk about literally anything. So that's what I did. I read and I went on TikTok. Yeah, thanks, Casey.
That is a valid, very valid resource, I think. Um, but yeah, I think that's kind of wrapping up our discussion. I think that the end goal, at least for me, was to show some vulnerability and to normalize these conversations. I think that you should feel like you can reach out to someone without the fear of repercussion. And it's easier said than done, I know, but I hope that there was something that you can take away from this discussion, and that you feel like there's a community out there who's willing to listen. So thank you. If anybody has any parting comments, feel free to do so. Otherwise, Spoon can close it out for us. Thank you.
Yes, thank you so much, Casey. That was amazing. Yeah, thank you so much also as well to all the listeners as well, our audience and our community. So we're gonna be doing another episode next week. Please tune in on our YouTube channel, Next Gen KRC Next Gen, where we're posting a lot of uh, English videos as well as a lot of videos helping this discussion with the youth, as well as our main channel with KRCLA YouTube channel, which has a lot of videos for the Korean American community as well. Yeah, so next week, just a quick recap, and this is like a preview for next week. We're talking about health resources for immigrants. So we're going to be talking about what are some of the resources that we have, what is willingness, what are some of the willingness to seek out some of the resources, fears about going to hospitals, regarding like financial costs or it's not feasible, or some definition on what is public charge that people have this discussion about, and what does it mean for the undocumented and immigrant communities today in California. So thank you all so much. I wanted to do a quick shout out to obviously Casey, who's an amazing uh, a facilitator of this discussion. And thank you so much to Ria, Bubbles, and Blue also for sharing. Yeah, so we're going to take a quick thank you to everybody. And that wraps it up with our second episode of What's Up. Thank you so much for listening in. Please tune in next week on all of the social media platforms. And we see you all next week. Bye.